Hi guys, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the JR-Koders channel. Today we are going to install Linux on our Windows machines. You may have heard of virtual machines and maybe even use softwares like VMware or VirtualBox, but those softwares are slow to boot up and require a lot of setup and configuration. So today I'm going to show you a way better alternative in my opinion. It is called WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux. It is super easy to install and no configuration is required. Please note that you will need Windows 10 or higher in order to install WSL. Let's get started! There are two versions of WSL available. So, to compare the two versions, we can go on the official Microsoft website. I'll leave a link in the description. The primary differences between WSL 1 and 2 are the use of an actual Linux kernel inside a managed VM, support for full system call compatibility, and performance across the Linux and Windows operating system. WSL 2 is the current default version when installing a Linux distribution and uses the latest and greatest virtualization technology to run a Linux kernel inside of a lightweight utility virtual machine. WSL 2 runs Linux distributions as isolated containers inside the managed VM. So basically, WSL 1 doesn't support every program and features because it just uses a translation layer. It is not a real Linux machine. On the other hand, WSL 2 uses virtualization, that is, WSL 2 uses an optimized VM with its own Linux kernel inside of it, meaning that everything will be as if you were on a real Linux machine. For those who don't know, the kernel is at the very base of the operating system. It makes the communication between the OS and the hardware resources possible. You can also note that the kernel is not the same for Windows, macOS, and Linux. Overall, WSL 2 tends to be better than WSL 1, so I would recommend that you install WSL 2. To install WSL, it is really easy. Just hold the Windows key and press R, then type in the box PowerShell, hit enter. Once the PowerShell terminal loaded, type in WSL-install and just wait for the installation to finish. As you can see, it installs Ubuntu by default, but I will talk about other subsystems later in the video. Okay, so the installation finished. We now have to enter a Unix username. So in Linux by default there will be a root session and you will also have your own session that you will create. It's like in Windows where you can have the administrator session and also have, for example, the kid session. So for the username I will enter JR-Koders. I will enter 1234 as a password. I'll have to retype it again. Please note that the session you're creating does not have to match the session you have on Windows. Once Ubuntu finishes initializing, you now have an access to a fully functional Ubuntu terminal. Isn't that really cool? In a few minutes you were able to install a fully functional Ubuntu subsystem. I mean, you can do pretty much everything. So for example, I'll just clear my screen and type in ls. ls is the function to list all the files and directories. I really recommend that you take a Linux full course if you haven't taken one yet. You will learn a lot of things from it. I also recommend that you look up a Linux cheat sheet to help you when you look for a command. We can now close our terminal by simply typing exit and exit again to exit the PowerShell terminal. To access the Ubuntu terminal again, it is also really simple. Just hit the Windows key, look up Ubuntu, and here it is. And that's it, you now have access to your Ubuntu subsystem. It would have taken a lot more time to load if you were using a VM. So here it just booted up in seconds, and now I can literally do anything I want with it. cd/ to enter the root folder, hit enter, ls, and here you can see all the different folders there are. So I can, for example, change directory into the user directory. ls again. Okay, not that one. But now, what if you want other Linux distributions that you don't feel like Ubuntu, but that you want, for example, Debian? Well, it's almost as easy as installing WSL. The only thing you have to do is open a new tab, type in apps.microsoft.com. I'll look for Debian, hit enter. I'll click on the first link. I'll click install. It shouldn't take too much time to install. Now that it's finished installing, let's click open. Let's wait for it to install. Okay, so here, same thing, we have to enter a Unix username. It doesn't have to be the same as your Windows username and password. You can put absolutely what you want. So to keep it simple for me, I'll just type in JR-Koders, but it could be something else for you. For my password, I'll type 1234, 1234 again. Amazing! We now have a fully functional Debian subsystem. Did you see how fast that went? That's crazy. If you ever used VMware before, you know how much pain is it to install another thing. So for example, if you want to install Debian, you have to go on the Debian website, install the Debian distribution, then load the Debian distribution into VMware, then set everything up, and then create your username. Here, you just had to look it up into apps.microsoft.com, click open, and that's it. So again, I can type anything I want, so clear, ls, cd/ to enter the root folder, ls again, and here you can see all the files. So once again, this is Debian. I can also open an Ubuntu terminal by simply looking for Ubuntu here, enter, and I now have two Linux terminals open. So to know the name of the Linux distribution, you can just type in cat/etc/os-release, hit enter, and here you can see that it's Debian. If I do the same command here, cat/etc/os-release, you'll now see that this is Ubuntu. So I have two different Linux systems in the same place, and it takes literally seconds to boot up. So that is why I really like WSL. So now let's talk about the few basics commands that you are likely to use at one time or another. I'll quit that Debian terminal, I'll quit the Ubuntu terminal. In this part of the tutorial, we will cover a few basics commands that you're likely to use with WSL. For example, what if you wanted to change from WSL1 to WSL2 or from WSL2 to WSL1? Well, it is really easy. Open a partial terminal and type in wsl-set-default-version 2, for example, to go to WSL2. In my case, I was already running WSL2, so it didn't change anything. And to go back to WSL1, what you can do is type wsl-set-default-version 1. I don't really want to go back to WSL1, so I won't hit enter, but if that's what you want to do, then do it. So now, what if you wanted to have, for example, the Debian subsystem running WSL1 and the Ubuntu subsystem running WSL2? Well, it's also really easy. To do that, you first want to list every distribution that's running, so type wsl-list-verbose, hit enter, and as you can see, I have an Ubuntu subsystem and a Debian subsystem. So now that I know that I have these two subsystems, what I can do is type wsl-set-version, type the name of the machine that you want to set the version to. So for example, Debian 1 if I want to go to WSL1. I'll then hit enter. If you want to know more about all the WSL commands available, I'll leave a link in the description. The last thing I want to show you guys today is how to uninstall WSL. Uninstalling WSL is a bit more complicated than installing it, but I'll walk you through it. To do that, hit Windows and click on the settings icon. Then go in the apps section, click installed apps, and there look for Windows Subsystem for Linux and hit enter. So here, if you want to uninstall it, you will have to click the three dots and click uninstall. Then you will have to look for all the distribution you installed, that is, in my case, Ubuntu and Debian. So for example, Ubuntu. Click the three dots and click uninstall. And then also look for Debian, because I installed it in my case. Click the three dots and click uninstall. If you did those steps, you successfully uninstalled WSL. That's it for this tutorial. I hope you guys learned things today, and if you did, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. You can comment WSL is better than VMware in the comment section down below. See you guys in the next one!